Okay, let's take a little time to discuss ethics violations in the media. Ethics violations in the media involve breaching professional standards of truth, accuracy, and objectivity, often driven by sensationalism, political bias, and commercial pressure. Major violations include fabricating stories, plagiarizing content, invading privacy, and allowing conflicts of interest such as paid propaganda disguised as news. These breaches diminish public trust and can cause significant social harm. Key types of media ethics violations: sensationalism or clickbait, engaging in news to increase ratings or clicks, compromising the truth. Fabrication and plagiarism, creating fake news stories, altering photos, or stealing works, such as in cases highlighted in. Bias and lack of objectivity, presenting personal corporate opinions as factual reporting when frequently cited in political coverage. Conflicts of interest, accepting payments for coverage or failing to disclose financial relationships, such as when experts or journalists are paid by government entities. Invasion of privacy, intruding into the private lives of individuals without a clear overriding public interest justification. Misinformation and disinformation, spreading false information, often through social media, with lacks traditional gatekeeping. Remember, disinformation is illegal for lawyers and judges. Penalties are fines, removal from public service, and incarceration. And if death is involved, they can receive the death penalty. Or is that letter of the law? But either way, there's still, look up the penalties for disinformation. Stereotyping, promoting biased, harmful, or simplistic portrayals of minority groups, women, or vulnerable populations. Recent example in cases: 2020 election reporting. Various platforms, notably Fox News, was criticized for promoting false claims of election fraud. Sexist commentaries. News personalities such as former CNN host Don Lemon have faced consequences for misogynistic comments. Paid content. Historical examples include columnists like Maggie Gallagher and Michael J. McManus being paid by the government for promotion without disclosure. Conflicts of interest. Student journalism cases often involve ethical dilemmas about converting peers or acting with friendships are involved. These violations are often reviewed through frameworks of the SPJ Code of Ethics, which serves as a guide for ethical decisions making rather than a legally be enforced document. Okay, violating journalism ethics. Okay. Let's see. Ethics case studios, ethics issues in the media. What are ethical issues in the media? Ethical issues in the media involve balancing accuracy with speed, maintaining objectivity, and avoiding sensationalism or bias. Key challenges include the spread of misinformation, privacy invasion, stereotyping of minorities and women, and conflicts of interest. Digital advertisements have worsened issues like clickbait and advertising editorial blending. Journalist scandals include plagiarism, fabrication, and omission of information, activities that violate the law or violate ethical rules, and the altering or staging of an event being documented or making substantial reporting or researching errors with the result of leading to laborious and defamatory statements. What are some ethical issues in social media? Ethical issues in social media revolve around privacy violations, the spread of information, cyberbullying, and algorithm bias. Key concerns include data mining without informed consent, the impact of addictive design on mental health, and the application of polarizing content. These challenges demand improved digital literacy, content moderation, and accountability. Okay, this is what I was talking about before: ethical issues in social media around privacy violations, the spread of misinformation, and people lying. That's all it is. People lying. People. I know when I first joined Facebook, people were talking about they hate fact checkers, and then they tell you do your research. And that's what I did. I used to have a lot of lawyers on my page, and when I started correcting them, they stopped showing up on my wall. Generally, there are about 12 ethical principles: honesty, fairness, leadership, accountability, integrity, compassion, respect, and responsibility, loyal, respect for the law, transparency, and environmental concerns. It's hard to imagine a lot of people in the media don't concern themselves with our environmental concerns. If you read the public trust doctrine, everybody should be concerned about that, because that's a promise of clean air, water, and land, and that's not happening, okay? What are the 6 media ethics? The Radio, Television, Digital News Association organization exclusively centered on electronic journalism has a code of ethics centering on public trust, truthfulness, fairness, integrity, independence, and accountability. An ethical violation is a breach of established moral principles, professional codes of conduct, or company policies. Okay, let's go back up here for a sec. Firing an employee is a political favor involves complex intersection and employment law, constitutional rights, and ethical standards. While private employers often have broad authority to terminate staff, government-related firings are strictly regulated to prevent political patronage. Public versus private sector. The legality of firing for political reasons depends heavily on whether the employer is a private business or government entity. Government employees cannot fire rank and file employees for their political affiliation or fulfill a political favor. The Supreme Court has ruled that making employment conditional on surrendering First Amendment rights to a political expression is an abuse of power. Private employers, in most U.S. states, private employers can fire employees for their political views or activities because the First Amendment only protects against government interference, not private business. In an at-will state, an employer can fire a worker for almost any reason that doesn't violate specific civil rights laws. Legal protections and exceptions. Even in the private sector, certain laws may make a politically motivated firing illegal. State-specific protections. Several states, including California, New York, and Louisiana, have specifically protecting employees from discrimination based on political activities or affiliations outside of work. Protected classes of political firing is used as a pretext to target an employee based on race, religion, sex, or national origin. It violates federal laws like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Okay, you should look that up. National Labor Relations Act. If the employee's political activity is tied to the workplace conditions or organizations, e.g., advocating for a higher minimum wage, they may be protected under National Labor Relations Act. Okay, ethical violations for business. Firing someone as a political favor, even where legal, often results in significant ethical and operational flaw. Morale and reputation. Such actions can destroy workplace morale, leading to higher turnover as other employees lose trust in the organization's fairness. Public backlash. Publicized cases for politically motivated fires can lead to boycotts or negative reviews on platforms like Glassdoor and Indeed, damaging the brand. Like CBS right now. Firing that one guy, I forgot his name, on late night television. Colbert, Stephen Colbert. That was clearly a political favor. Ethical violations. Litigations costs. Disgruntled employees may still file wrongful termination or retaliation lawsuits, which are costly and time-consuming, even if the employer eventually wins. Recent high-profile cases. Recent lawsuits have been highlighted these tensions, particularly in the federal sector. Former federal employees have filed class action lawsuits against the Trump administration, alleging the mass layoffs were politically motivated and targeted individuals based on perceived DEI advocacy or unpatriotic labels. Political retaliation claims. FBI agents and other career civil servants have tested new legal claims over being fired for actions perceived as political, such as kneeling during protests or investigating specific political figures. Okay, give me an example of state and political affiliation protections in the private sector. Are there ethical codes for employers on political firings? Well, there is no single universal ethical code specifically for political firings. Various professional, legal, and legislative frameworks establish ethical boundaries for employees. These guidelines typically prioritizing preventing coercion, maintaining workplace civility, and respecting off-duty conduct. Professional and corporate ethics. Professional organization and corporate governance standards provide broad ethical benchmarks. HR best practices. A Society for Human Resources Management emphasize HR professionals should refrain from giving or seeking preferential treatment in human resource process and must prioritize identifying and disclosing conflicts of interest. Workplace civility policies. Many organizations adopt policies that emphasize exclusively and respect diverse perspectives to prevent political discord from damaging productivity. Industry-specific codes. Some professional associations, such as the National Association of Social Workers, specifically forbid discrimination based on political belief as a potential ethical standard. Legal ethics for public officials. The strictest ethical codes regarding political favors apply to government entities to prevent corruption. Federal Hatch Act restricts executive branch employees from using their official authority to influence or interfere with an election. House Code of Official Conduct specifically prohibits members from Congress from influencing the employment decisions of private entities based on partisan political affiliation. Prohibited personal practices. Federal law 5 U.S.C. explicitly bans coercing political activity for retaliating against an employee for refusing to engage in such activity. State law legislative ethics. When federal law generally lacks political protection of private employees, several states have codified ethics into the law. California and New York, these states have laws prohibiting employers from controlling or directing the political affiliations or activities of their employees. Colorado protects employees from being fired for lawful off-duty activities, which include political expression outside the work hours. Washington, D.C., the Human Rights Act explicitly lists political affiliation as a protected class, making it unethical and illegal to fire someone based on their political ties. Ethical fairness in an at-will employment. In an at-will states like Illinois, where an employer can legally fire someone for their political views, ethical discussions often center on organizational health. Morale and reputation. Ethics argue that firing for political reasons can be seen as a threat to all employees' personal lives, potentially destroying company morale. Objective termination. Ethical leadership suggests terminating only when political behavior becomes destructive, unprofessional, or disruptive to the work environment rather than for the belief itself. Laws that prohibit retaliation and discrimination. Okay, so let's go, where was it? Here. Media ethics constitute moral principles guiding media professionals to report truth accurately, maintain independence, and minimize harm. Key principles include verifying facts, avoiding conflicts of interest, respecting privacy, and providing context, ensuring accountability to the public. These standards build credibility, promote transparency, and protect individual rights. Core principles of media ethics: truth and accuracy. Information must be verified and presented in context. Journalists should never knowingly introduce false information. Minimizing harm. Ethical journalism requires showing compassion for those affected by news coverage, especially victims of tragedy, children, and inexperienced sources. Independence and conflict of interest. Media professionals should avoid conflicts of interest, such as accepting gifts or special treatment, to remain free from bias or external influence. Transparency and accountability. Journalists should be accountable for their work, disclose sources when possible, and promptly correct any mistakes. Fairness, presenting diverse perspectives and treating sources with respect. Key ethical issues and applications: privacy versus public interest. A constant balance is needed between the public's need for information and individuals' right to privacy, particularly for private individuals. Social media and digital content. Using content found online requires verification, attribution, ensuring images are not altered or misrepresented. Uncovering, reporting. Spurious methods should only be used when traditional open methods fail to yield crucial information. More professional codes of ethics. Society of Professional Journalism Code of Ethics, emphasizing seeking truth, minimizing harm, acting independent, and being accountable. Media ethics, in turn, focus on research regarding consequences of media, including social media. Spreading misinformation is generally protected by the First Amendment in the U.S., but it becomes a crime when it crosses into specific prohibited areas. Criminal acts include making false reports about public safety, such as bomb threats, defamation, libel, slander, fraud, or interfering with election process. Public safety threats. According to 18 U.S. Code 35 and 18 U.S. 2292, conveying false information with reckless disregard for safety, such as reporting fake crimes, are, as discussed on providing false, damaging information in emergencies, can lead to heavy fines and imprisonment. Defamation, fraud. Knowingly spreading false information harms a person's reputation. Defamation, or is used for financial gain. Fraud, which is illegal and subject to civil lawsuits. Election misinformation. Intentionally spreading false info regarding the time, place, or method of voting can be a criminal offense. Digital information. Creating and spreading, or as discussed in ex post, sharing deep fake videos to falsely report crimes can lead to arrest. Whoever imparts and conveys or causes to be imparted or conveyed false information, knowing the information to be false concerning an alleged attempt being made or to be made to do an act to which would be a crime prohibited by this chapter, Chapter 97, or Chapter 111 of this title, shall be subject to civil penalty of not more than $1,000, which is revocable in civil action, brought in the name of the United States. Whoever willfully, maliciously, and with reckless disregard for safety of human life imparts or conveys or causes to be imparted or conveyed false information, knowing the information to be false concerning or attempt to be made or to be made to do any act which could be crime prohibited by this chapter or chapter 97 or chapter 111 of this title shall be fined under this title in prison not more than 5 years or both. It's a lot easier than going through the books I used to go through, I'm telling you. Is it illegal to spread misinformation online? Spreading misinformation online is generally not a crime in the U.S. due to the First Amendment protections, but it becomes a criminal act when it crosses into fraud, defamation, harassment, or incites violence. Specific laws penalize spreading false info on election details, hoax threats, or using AI deepfakes to harm reputation. Key legal distinctions for misinformation. Criminal charges spreading false information intended to cause panic, such as bomb hoaxes or fake emergency situations, is a federal crime. Civil liability. Defamation, libel lawsuits can arise when false information ruins a person's reputation, cause financial harm. Platform policies. Most social media platforms considering malicious falsehoods a violation of their community guidelines, which can lead to accounts of being banned separate from legal action. Narrow exemptions. The government can restrict specific types of false speech, including fraudulent claims, perjury, and speech that incites imminent lawless action. I think we've seen that January 6th. When general fake news is often protected, while general fake news is often protected, willful, malicious, or reckless misinformation, especially that which causes tangible harm or illegal activities, can lead to prosecution and civil lawsuits. You see, people, that's why I stick to the letter of the law when I post anything. So that way somebody can't get me for disinformation or misinformation. And you can hold me to the letter of law on that, because that's all I do, is I read the laws word for word to the letter. You know what the penalties are for violating the letter of the law? I already did that. Violation of the letter of the law, strict little breach or written rule, regulation, or statute, regardless of the intent behind it. It offers behind it. It differs from violating the spirit law, which breaks the underlying purpose or intent of the rules, such as infractions often involve technicalities or loopholes. Key aspects for violating the letter of the law. Literal interpretation is direct infraction. Exact language, such as driving 1 mile per hour over the speed limit while failing to have a specific document, even if no harm intended was caused. Distinction from spirit. A person can violate the letter of the law while adhering to the spirit of the law, e.g., speeding to take someone to the hospital, or violate the spirit while technically following the letter. Legal consequences. Even if minor violations of the letter of law, such as minor traffic infractions or petty offenses, can result in penalties like fines. Context. A concept frequently used when technical rules are enforced, leading to outcomes that seem unfair or contrary to the law's original intent. In essence, letter of the law violations are about the technical, explicit violations or formal codes. What does the phrase letter of the law mean? Letter of the law can be defined any formal code, rule, regulations, or principles that must be followed according to governmental mandates or policies. In short, it is the law as it is written. Okay, so that's what I use. The law as it is written. Some crazy lady tried telling me on one of my posts on YouTube that what I read doesn't mean what I read. I need a lawyer to tell me what it means or some kind of crazy stuff. She was telling me what I read didn't mean what I read, and she said she had the best lawyers that are advising her. Interpretation of the U.S. Constitution have historically been divided on the letter versus spirit debate. For example, the founding Federalist Party argued that for a looser interpretation of the Constitution, granting Congress broad powers and keeping the spirit of the broader purpose of some founding fathers. Nobody, including the Federalist founders, proposed Federalists, which have represented a spirit interpretation contrast. Democratic Republican who favored a limited federal government argued that the strict interpretation of the Constitution argued that the federal government was granted only those powers enumerated in the Constitution, nothing not more explicitly stated. They represent the letter interpretation. Modern constitutional interpretation is also divided on these lines. Living Constitution scholars advocate for a spirituesque interpretive strategy, although one grounded in the spirit that reflects broad powers. Original or textualist scholars advocate a more letter-based approach, arguing that the amendment process of the Constitution necessarily forecloses broader interpretations that can be accomplished by passing an amendment. What is it called when a law violates the Constitution? A law that violates the Constitution is said to be unconstitutional. Such laws are considered invalid, void, or no legal effect as established by the principle judicial review. Because the Constitution is supreme law, laws found to be unconstitutional cannot be equally enforced. The letter of the law reflects the strict literal adherence to the written rules, regardless of intent, fairness, or context. Examples include receiving a speeding ticket for going 1 mile over the limit, a technical penalty in sports, or being fined for having a dog off-leash in a park despite no one being nearby. So they're going by the spirit of the law on that. You know, going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, no cop in their right mind would write that ticket. But when it comes to the rules of professional conduct and the code of judicial conduct, the Constitution, I always hold everybody to the letter of the law. Penalties for violating the letter of the law are strict, regarding from fines and probation to imprisonment, depending on the severity of the offense. The jurisdiction violations can trigger immediate legal consequences such as, but not limited to, 15 U.S. Code 1825, up to $5,000 fine, or up to 15 U.S. 15 or up to as 15 U.S. Code, a year in jail. Felony charges, deprivation of rights, up to life imprisonment, and 15 U.S. Code 1825, permanent criminal record. Criminal charges, violations can lead to misdemeanor or felony charges, potentially resulting in jail or prison time. Fines and financial penalties. Courts may impose significant fines, sometimes exceeding $25,000 per day for specific violations. Probation and deferred sentencing. Violating probation can result. Okay, but that's all I wanted to get to. Penalties for violating the letter of the law. Okay? So stick to that, people. I do often, when I was growing up, I was people. I was always considered a little literal person, you know, a letter of the law person. You know, sometimes people would say things, and I took it as so. And they said, no, you know what I meant. No, I only know what I heard. I can only go by what I heard. If you want me to sit back and figure out what you meant, that ain't going to happen. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not going to do that. I never did it for a woman in my life, and I'm definitely not going to do it for a lawyer or a judge. So I will hold them quite literally to the letter of the law, which I always do. And you can question any lawyer or judge about the penalties for violating the letter of the law. And I bet you they don't tell you this. There's been many of arguments I had with lawyers throughout the years, throughout my years. Even at my I worked at a steel mill called Hendricks and Spring in Chicago, and they fired me, they said, for lying on my application, but they lied on the union contract. They didn't fulfill any part of the union contract, and they got upset because I kept holding them to the letter of the law. They wanted me to work 70 to 80 hours a week. I put in 72, and they wanted more. You know, we were only guaranteed 39 hours a week, but it was mandatory to put in some overtime, and then the company put mandatory Saturdays as overtime. Then they got upset because I wouldn't work overtime during the week if I had to do it during Saturday. They failed to live up to the letter of the law on that contract entirely. And the union did nothing. They mentioned it in the letter, you know, you're violating the letter of the contract. Well, basically the letter of the law. They used so many different dirty tactics. And it was just to get me to work more hours, and they did that to everybody at the company just so they didn't have to hire more people. They said, you know, the insurance was expensive, and, you know, but it was just to get everybody to put in 12 hours, 12-hour days, minimum 6 days a week, 7 days. You know, they didn't live up to the contract. And a lot of people got mad at me when the company moved to Mexico, but I warned them it was coming. But I was upset too. But either way, people, remember to stick to the letter of the law, specifically when it comes to ethical violations. All right, thank you and good night. I'll see you again soon. I just thought I was watching the news, and these issues came up. So I thought I had to talk to you about them. Let's just leave that there for a minute, okay? People, you got to start using law. People keep making comments. They ain't going to do this. They ain't going to do that. You know, for years, I've been trying to get all these people to live up to the oath. I've been at it with, I went to the FBI, dealt with the DOJ. One time I had the Secret Service give me a visit. That scared the crap out of me. But it's not going to do a whole lot of good when it's just one person filing all these complaints for breaking all these laws. It's almost useless, just one person doing it. People, quit making snotty comments and do something. All right, just do something. Even if you're just doing it for yourself, you're going to wind up kicking down the door for other people. Okay? So, I mean, I really need all of you. You know, you can file a complaint for these. It's called deprivation of rights, as you've seen, as I read through here. Lawyers and judges, it's a constant fact that neither abide by or enforce the rules of professional conduct and the code of judicial conduct, which is deprivation of rights. Your lawyer not living up to the rules of professional conduct, yet alone revealing them to you, his legal rights to you, that's deprivation of rights, and them not doing it, that's so many rights they're depriving you of. Every rule in the rules of professional conduct, those are your rights. They took an oath to serve and protect the Constitution. The Constitution contains your constitutional rights. Them depriving you of any part of it is deprivation of rights. And the rules of professional conduct and the Code of Judicial Conduct is what establishes effective assistance of counsel in the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. All right? And them not doing that is deprivation of rights. And then when you read the rules of the codes, you look how many rights they're violating. All right, remember, when they took the oath, those are their constitutional duties, defending your constitutional rights. Just violating the oath alone is operating under the color of law, is deprivation of rights. A conspiracy against rights under the color of law because nobody's doing nothing to stop all this silliness. And I need your help. If you watch any of my videos, I point you to a lot of different places where you can file complaints. It's useless you just liking my videos and sharing them. I'm doing this for you so that way you can find resolution in what you're going through. Seriously, you don't have a chance unless you get a law degree. And how is that fair? That violates, the Fifth Amendment, fair trial? When you lack the knowledge of your opponents, your attorney, your assistants of counsel, the opposing party, and the judge, you're counting on your ignorance of the law. You don't know what's going on. You just say okay and do whatever they say. Talk about deprivation of rights. You don't have a chance. It's easier to handle you, to take away from you your life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, than it is taking candy from a baby. It is, people. I'm sorry. I don't mean this. I'm not trying to talk anybody down. I'm trying to bring you up. I'm trying to get you to stand up for your rights. And they're being sold to you. These are supposed to be free. And they're being sold to you by your assistants of counsel. So look up the rules of professional conduct. That's where deprivation of rights starts. When you hire an attorney and they don't discuss that with you. That's required in disclosure. Okay. So look up disclosure. I did a video on that. Get to know disclosure, but just I've done so many videos on all your rights that are being neglected, so many laws that are being rejected by people that are supposed to be enforcing these laws, and they aren't, and nobody's locking them up for violating all these laws. The rule of law is non-existent, folks. All right. The only way you'll get any of your rights, the only way anybody will abide by any of these laws is if you know them and take them to court with you. Let them know. The U.S. Constitution is the law of the land. Denying you that is deprivation of rights. They took an oath to secure that for you. And they didn't. And they won't. Until you stand up for yourself, open your eyes, do a little reading to open your mind, and maybe one day it'll affect you like it affected me. And I ain't got nothing but love for all of you. When it comes to we the people of my country, you have my undying devotion. Nothing but peace and love, okay? May your Creator always be with you and rain many blessings. Long life and good health, dear friends. Long life and good health. Many blessings. Good night.